the 2024 election and national politics. We have the culture war, and we have some culture warriors over here. And we have the state of California. Get the pun?
This is my favorite part, the rules, because if you have ever tried to harness 4 great talkers into 2 minutes of response, it's often, this is the most fun of Jen's job, is trying to make that happen. But 2 minutes per response, if we would, and we'll keep it fluid, though we can respond to each other and just have some fun today as we go through some of these topics.
That's right, we just want to stay on track so we can get to all of it. So are you all ready? Let's start with the culture war. So this question, first to Charlie Kirk and then to Dennis Prager. We'll get your comments on this. This week, many of you watched the RNC debate. How many of you watched President Trump talk to the other one? All right, so this week at the debate, Vivek Ramaswamy came out and said that he would like to see social media limited to those 16 and over. Now, many of you on the stage have made a pretty good business on social media. So, Charlie, what do you think about that idea from Vivek?
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. I can tell you that, I make a lot of following and impact on social media, but it's a toxin and it's a cancer. And I think I'm actually in a unique position to say the impact that it can make. But look, there's no reason why a 14-year-old in America should have a smartphone, period, let alone access to these social media companies that are addicting them. And look, you understand that when a young person is using either TikTok or Instagram or Facebook, they are not a consumer, they are the product. And then the social media companies are selling them. And not that many parents out here need parenting advice, but do not give your kids these devices unless you are prepared to see them completely and totally change. And by the way, these are the gateway drugs where the trans agenda is being pushed, where a lot of these Marxist ideas are being pushed. You wonder, why are so many kids becoming trans? They're seeing this garbage on TikTok, especially young ladies. And I read a study the other day that 9-year-olds, more 9-year-olds have smartphones than don't have smartphones. I grew up in a time just 10 years ago where we didn't have these honestly, dopamine addicting tools in our front pockets, and the country was a lot better. So some people might say, well, then why do we need a law for it? If we do not have laws to protect children, then what good are laws, right? And there are some things that children should not have access to. I know the state of California and the government certainly agrees, like pornography, and also drugs, alcohol, and that should also go to the new drug of choice, which is scrolling through your social media feed. And by the way, the people that are opposing this are making hundreds of billions of dollars off of your children. There's a beautiful life to be lived outside of a smartphone or a device, and I would love to see the Republican Party embrace that.
There is something to be said for, can parents decide for themselves for kids? Right? I have a 14-year-old, he doesn't have social media, and he kills me because he doesn't, and all his friends do.
Is it a parenting decision or a ban, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Dennis?
Well, I had not heard that comment of Vivek Ramaswamy. It's a very interesting one. I have to think it through. But first, my instinctive reaction is it would be a better world if kids were not. That's obvious. I think everyone here agrees. I don't know how it would be enforced, to be honest. If they have a phone, I don't know how you can prevent them from seeing this stuff. I don't know. Maybe it can be done. I can tell you, I have some degree of ambivalence because obviously PragerU uses social media to get its message across. And our access to children, young people, is a billion views, more than a billion views a year. And most of them are under 35 years of age. So I can tell you this, I'll tell you an interesting little anecdote. So my son is an Orthodox Jew. I'm a religious Jew, but not as Orthodox. And they don't use electricity on the Sabbath, as many of you probably know about religious Jews. So as a result, my grandchildren don't use their phone on Shabbat. So I was just there literally a week ago for the bar mitzvah of my oldest grandchild in Florida. And I beheld something that is increasingly rare. There must have been 40 kids coming in and out of my son's home, just playing with one another. Had I been able to video it, I wouldn't video it because of the electricity issue in his home. But if I videoed it, you would think I was showing you something from 1970. And the magic is one thing. Because they don't use electricity on the Sabbath, they don't use their phones. So they are forced to play with other kids. That's how disastrous it has been.
As someone who uses social media a lot, I think it's like the downfall of society in many respects, of even adults. But Mark and Brandon, next question's for you guys, and I want to turn to the transgender war that's going on. At the GOP debate, Gavin Newsom comes in, and our buddy Joel Pollack, who comes on the program every Friday, I guess it is. Friday? Yeah, every Friday. Or every Wednesday. Joel Pollack comes in, and he asks Governor Gavin Newsom, what's wrong with letting the parents know if a kid in school is going to call himself by a different gender or transition or any of these things? And Gavin Newsom responded, 1% of the population. How dare you invoke this at the Reagan Library? Which this guy is slick, Gavin Newsom. What is behind all of this, Mark? And how do we stop it? Because Gavin Newsom plays it down 1%, claims we didn't talk about climate change as the issue.
Right. First of all, why are we promoting Gavin Newsom? I've never seen anything like this in my life. Everywhere I turn, are you running for president? Are you running for president? President of what country? The guy destroyed Reagan's California. Every corner of the culture, every corner of life. You're going to lose 5 congressional seats. That's a net 4 million people who are exiting this state in the next decade, and I'm not even counting illegal aliens. So we looked at him for advice. I'm going to say what I believe, whether people like it or not. This whole thing about transgenderism is a mental issue, and people who promote it are in many ways privileged. I know there are medical conditions, I got it. I know there's like 3,000 people in the country, got it. But when did it become a political juggernaut that has to be taught to our kids and so forth and so on? My theory on this, which is actually in the book and I talk about often, there is a constant war against the nuclear family. Constant, endless. It's the same party that pushed eugenics 100 years ago, and that's why they push abortion on demand. They don't believe in the nuclear family. Their policy since the 60s forward destroyed the nuclear family. They have no regard for life and humanity. So transgenderism per se is something that the left, the media, the Democrat Party has glommed onto to promote their agenda. There'll be something else after this. I'll tell you a little story. My father was a World War II vet. He died 5 years ago, 93 years old. And we talk about this. My beautiful wife Julie's here. My mentor, Phil Boyce, is here. And I want to say thank you to Salem for having me on this fantastic station, and thanks to all you patriots for coming out this evening as well. I can only imagine what he would say if he saw what was going on today. Amen. He would be sick to his stomach. I'm telling you the truth. And a lot of these vets say, what the hell did I fight for? Because the people in the United States, the vast majority of whom don't belong to the military, don't even think about joining the military, never fought in the military, they're the ones destroying the country. So I would just tell you now, whether it's transgenderism or what it is, why is it happening? I explain why. But the bottom line, it is happening. And I want to thank all those religious Jews, evangelical Christians, and yes, Muslims who turn out at these school board meetings. It's also uniting us. It's also uniting us.
Brandon, I think it's a war on men as well. I call it the androgynization of America.
Well, yeah, I think it starts from these people hating God. That's what I think. It starts with them hating God, and then they hate every principle that God has for their life. The nuclear family is a part of that. Obviously, God created Adam and Eve from the very beginning. That's a two people nuclear family, a man and a woman, not two men. And so I think that the hatred towards God caused them to matriculate their thought processes down through our generation and through culture, which caused things to become confusing. I really feel genuinely bad for the young people who are struggling with their gender identity. It's a real thing. These people are really struggling. And I believe that we should help them and not thrust them into a mental disorder, which caused them to end up committing suicide and living a life that's never achievable. I say this all the time on my radio show. It's cute to dress them, or at least they believe it's cute to dress the little boy up as a girl when they're young. But they do not understand the gravity and consequence that they are going to have to deal with later in life. It is impossible for a young boy to become a girl. It is impossible. But the left tells them that it's possible. They give them this emotional feeling that it will come true. And then when they become adults and they realize that they're not going to get the attention that they thought that they would, they begin to go to a point where they want to kill themselves. And I think that's very shameful. These people are evil, and we have to stand up against them every chance we get.
I think ground zero for our culture war happens on college campuses throughout the country. It seems that's where the indoctrination has really started to drip in. We're feeling the effects of that, Charlie, and we'll start with you on this question. What are the glimmers of hope? We know all this stuff, the indoctrination that's coming in, but what are the glimmers of hope that you see when you're visiting college campuses and talking with young people?
Yeah.
Oh, come on.
Charlie.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
yes. Dennis on trend, yes.
Charlie knows me better than any human other than his wife. And he does, and I'm very honored by that fact. So he knew I was aching to say something. When Brandon spoke about it being a fight against God, I want to give you proof. This is not something you need to be a believer to understand he's right. And that is what is going on. And here's a simple principle. And if I'm wrong, I will never say it again. But if I am right, then what he said is the underlying crisis of the civilization. And that is simple as this. Only secular people say men give birth. Either that is correct or it is incorrect. All right? Not all secular people say men give birth, but only secular people do. No person who believes that God is the final author of the Ten Commandments or any other part of the Bible says men give birth. This is a completely secular construct. The worst institutions of our society, the stupidest, are the universities. They are the most secular institutions in our society. There is no secular institution that has wisdom. If that is not proof of the fact that this is ultimately a religious secular battle, there is no proof. Secularism breeds idiocy. Not every secular person is an idiot. Not every religious person is wise. There are religious fools and there are secular wise people. There is no secular institution that has wisdom. When I was on Bill Maher's show, it has gone viral, and I said, you know, you say Trump lies. Is there any lie comparable to the left's lies that America is systemically racist, or that men give birth? Men menstruate? He started laughing at me. This is really important, and my final little point. This was November 2019. This is almost 4 years ago, just 4 years ago. It's viral, it's on YouTube and tens of millions of views. He started laughing at me when I said that. The entire panel on stage laughed at me, the entire audience did. Dennis, this is what he says to me. Where did you get that? Who says men menstruate? And they all started laughing. That's not even 4 years ago. The ability of the left to force people into lies within a short period of time is frightening. And that is what has happened. Within 2 years, if you denied men menstruate, the left considered you a hater. Yes, it is ultimately a religious battle.
And Jennifer, it's a perfect segue. Dennis and I just visited Arizona State University for the second time in 6 months. This has been quite a source of unnecessary controversy. So Dennis and I attended this event hosted by a friend of ours and donor to both our organizations, PragerU and Turning Point USA, Tom Lewis, called Health, Wealth, and Happiness. And we in the days before the event, 37, right, Dennis? Was it 37? 37 professors out of 43 of the Honors College at Arizona State University signed an open letter saying Dennis and I should not be allowed to step foot on campus at Arizona State. Not that they don't like us, but we shouldn't be allowed to step foot on campus. And so this was just one example of many that I could go through. So you asked for some good news. Here's the good news, Jennifer. Despite all the censorship attempts, despite all the smearing and slandering, we're on campus tour right now. Tomorrow I'll be at San Jose State University, so pray for me. That'll be really good. But you know what our big problem is tomorrow? Is we can't find a room big enough to fit all the students that want to attend.
That's what happened at ASU.
At ASU. When Dennis and I were there, with very little promotion, very little, except Dennis promoting it on the radio every day. But we had to turn away 500, 600 kids that wanted to come to our event. So here's what's happening on campus, and I can prove it in the macro and the micro. So the polling shows this. Gen Z men are the most conservative that young men have been in 50 years. It's not an exaggeration. The data shows it. Young women, we got some work to do. So it's not so good. But the young men are radically more conservative. We can go through why. It kind of goes to your question, right, Grant? But there is hope. We see millennials, they moved 40 points in the Republican direction in the last 10 years. They were almost 80% Democrat in 2011, 2012 for Obama's re-election campaign. Now they're about 50-50 tilt Democrat, but it depends on what state you go into. So look, you have to fight, and that's exactly what I do every single day on college campuses, high school campuses. We have more high school chapters than college chapters, and I'm not going to make any sort of big predictions. I don't do hope and opium, you put it together, it makes you feel good. But there's a lot to be optimistic about, and young men in particular are sick and tired of the feminization of American culture, and they're ready to fight.
I've never asked you this question, Charlie. So my son's 14. I want him to go to college. I understand that college isn't right for everybody, but I want him to go. Are you against college, or are you, and I'm not saying this to be a Weisenheimer, I literally mean it, are you against college, or is it right for some people, or you say no go?
Yeah, I'm against almost every college in almost every circumstance. There's some exceptions. I mean, Hillsdale College is wonderful, and they do a great job. There's a couple, but I'd say 95% of the conversations I have are really bad reasons to send kids to school. Because they want to get a piece of paper or a credential. And I'll tell you a quick story, I don't mean to monopolize, but I was in a ruling class neighborhood in Palm Beach, and I asked a group of parents, I said, would you rather have your kid go to Stanford, Yale, Harvard, or have a kid with good character? And they paused. Your kid becomes a crummier version of themselves the second they go on a college campus. Now, maybe they survive because they enter a Turning Point chapter, but they play Russian roulette with their values, right, Dennis? Especially if you are going to just study some general thing, college is largely unnecessary. It's better to have your treasured young person in your life have good character, become a plumber, a welder, or electrician, instead of studying North African lesbian poetry at University of California.
So there's only one neighborhood in Palm Beach, by the way, and it is ruling class. That's the only neighborhood there is in Palm Beach. Brandon, your response to Charlie, and what do you think about college? Are you a former cop? What do you think?
Yeah, I haven't seen as much as Charlie, but I do go on these campuses, and I also speak with Turning Point USA students all the time. And it depends on who you are as a parent and how you're raising your children and what you want them to be when they grow up, right? There's some situations where you want your children to go to college, you take them to a really good Christian college, they get experience and exposure being around other people growing up. I'll just give you my personal example of my personal experience. I mean, I grew up tremendously going to college, leaving the little town that I lived in, around all the hood people that I grew up around. I went to college, I saw something different. I had an opportunity to get somewhat of an education, but my experience was more important than the education was at that time. I also was a student athlete, so I wasn't just attending school and going to class. I played football, the camaraderie, the teamwork, and all the things and skills that I was able to build. Being a football player in college was invaluable. And I also think that sometimes it's good for people to get exposed to the other side to a certain degree. You cannot force your kids to be conservative or Christian. Sometimes they just need some exposure, and they will be able to see for themselves what the other side looks like, and they will come to their senses. And this is why I say this. There was not one Republican in America that made me Republican. It was the exposure to the lies, the exposure to the evilness, the anti-God, the anti-police rhetoric of Barack Obama and the Democrats that caused me to change my mind. So you have to measure this based on your own family and what you know from your children. I have seen so many kids go and become corrupted, but there is a remnant of young people that I see, especially in the Turning Point chapters, that are standing up, that are changing the culture at these universities all around the country. So I'll say be wise, choose what's best for your children. Don't just go one way on it. You know, if it works out for them to go to college, allow them to have that experience. If it doesn't, don't be afraid to allow them to start working right out of high school.
Mark?
We come up with great ideas, but the problem's implementing them, isn't it? This ought to happen, this ought to happen, this ought to happen. Well, how about some great ideas that we can implement? Why do we keep funding these institutions? I mean, we have Republican states that pour billions of dollars. Why aren't Republicans taking some responsibility for what's happening in the culture? Many of these universities and college, I agree with you 100%. I went to one of the most left-wing colleges in America, Temple University in North Philadelphia. I came out more right-wing than when I went in. I'm watching, I don't know what the hell's going on here. Now, that said, that's because of the way I was raised. So each of us has a responsibility to raise smart kids. We have 4 kids. They went to 4 different colleges, and they came out great. Some people call the show and they say, I sent them, we can't even meet at Thanksgiving and so forth. So you got to work at undoing what's been done. And there are ways to do it. You have access to things, whether it's Prager University, whether it's my brother here, whether it's books now that you didn't have before. But more than that, we shouldn't be afraid of institutions that we're funding. Whether it's the public school system, and I'm so thrilled with all the competition now that's taking place, the parents' movement. Well, we need a parents' movement when it comes to these colleges and universities. You know, you shouldn't have tenure after 1 or 2 years when you're a radical left-wing Marxist bomb thrower. I don't want to pay for that person. And I mean that seriously. You have weather underground people who taught at the University of Chicago. These people were blowing up the Pentagon. They were blowing up real insurrectionists who were blowing up buildings in the 1960s and early 70s. Jimmy Carter took a bunch of them and put them in his administration. Bill Clinton gave clemency to a whole slew of them and all. I don't want to get into the whole Democrat Party, but there is no reason that that party and that ideology should control our entire culture. As for what Dennis said, my rabbi said, he's very good, about faith. Faith is very, very, very important. And yet I know people who don't have a lot of faith, who are solid as a rock, and good people too. Not enough. And my attitude about what's going on about transgenderism and everything else that's going on in our culture. He studies the Bible. Unfortunately, I study Marx. And in the Communist Manifesto, Marx specifically talks about taking out the family. For the very reasons that these gentlemen have said. Because you're creating contrary social and moral behaviors that cannot be tolerated. That's why we have now the government schools and their bureaucrats, their teachers coming between parents and their children. That's part of the reason on transgenderism. Whatever works, destroy the nuclear family. The greatest demographic that votes for the Democrat Party is not minority groups. It's single women without children. It is a huge demographic, and they want abortion on demand. And so the Democrat Party said, why do they keep doing this? Because they're about power, that's why. But my point generally is this, both from the secular point of view, which I agree, I think faith is crucially important. Some people don't have faith. Fine, I don't think we should blow them off. I'm just making the point that we are up against a force that we have to recognize, that we have to accept, that we have to define, that we have to characterize, a force that has been devoured and enveloped by the Democrat Party, which has embraced it. And so when you see things going on and you say, what the hell is this? That's what it is.
Yeah. So you brought up Marx. His goal was also to divide, right, Mark? So, Brandon, I want to turn to you. One of the ways they divide is through race. And so you got Joe Biden calling black men boy. And as Dan Foman pointed out on our show one day, he says, and he always follows it up with an athletic comment about how athletic the guy is too, if you notice this. It's literally quintessential racism, and yet we're the ones that are called racist. Do you see a change in black men, black women, minorities? And you're probably more attuned to it than the group of white guys up here, and gals. Gals.
At least I hope so. No, I am seeing a change. You know, back, I don't know, in 2016 when me and Candace Owens first became popular, you know, it was the start. And there's a lot of Charlie Kirk in terms of what you say, because I think we got our start there and we just went across the country with it. And it was the start of people being able to hear a different voice. Because my whole life, all I heard was that Democrats were the party of the people and Republicans were racist white people. I had never heard a Republican speak. I've never seen a Republican candidate. All I saw were Democrats. And if you had a problem with a Democrat, it's because you needed the other Democrat that was better than that Democrat. And once you start hearing different voices, you say, well, wow, there are people who are black, who come from these areas or that I resonate with, that think differently. And I have seen an incredible change over the course of time with people waking up. And like I said, it's not really necessarily the Republicans, it's the Democrats. They have gone so crazy that people cannot stomach it anymore. The fact that everything that happens in America is racist is mind-blowing to me. There was real racism in this country at some point. Real people had real issues and there was discrimination. Now, it doesn't matter what happens. If one person is white, the other is black, it's somehow a racial encounter. And people are getting sick and tired of being sick and tired of it. And the more people get tired of it, the more you expose it, the more you have people wake up.
Can I just ask you real quick? I got so upset with Deion Sanders because I thought it was going to be a great story about Deion. He takes this team